Good evening, everybody. Wonderful to see you. We're filling up the park tonight for our special celebration for our nation's birth for July 4th. We're going to give you plenty of ammo to wave your flag at tonight, and we want you to do that as we go through our wonderful program that we've selected to really satisfy our every melody need for July 4th. Up here in the front in the blue box, we have a program, so please stop up and grab a program if you don't have one. And we want to welcome the VFW Post 10272 of Oregon and Brooklyn here tonight to supply our colors and flags of the services, because we do want to salute our service veterans tonight with a big round of applause as we go through the concert. We want to thank also Hy-Vee for sponsoring the Oregon Food Pantry and refreshments tonight. Thank you so much to Hy-Vee for doing that, and thank you to Food Pantry people for serving us tonight. This is our 44th year here in Oregon, and we've been on this concrete since that whole period of time, but it's changed quite a bit in the time that we've played our concerts here. When we first got here back 35, 40 years ago, there was a railing all the way around this with bushes about this high. So at our first concert, a wonderful man named Al Gassner came to our first concert, and with his bush trimmer, he trimmed all the bushes down around the band shell so you could see the band. And after that, we worked very carefully on planning the band shell that you have in front of you right now. With your sponsorship and with many people's help in design and also putting it up, the band shelter is here. And it's been just a wonderful place for us to play, right in the middle of downtown Oregon. The band shelter serves as a great sound producer because we can hear each other very well under the band shelter, and it also pushes the sound towards you. So it's really double duty for a park pavilion to also a band shelter. So we appreciate that. We also appreciate all the Oregon Parks and Land Department trustees for taking care of the park so well, from cutting the grass to pressure washing off the concrete every spring and cleaning the light bulbs over the top of us. Everything is so ready to go for us, and we appreciate that so much. So what I'd like to do now is I invite you to rise, remove your headgear, and join us in the singing of the national anthem with the Oregon Brooklyn VFW supplying our colors. Forward, march. Fanfare as they come over. Here's the trumpets, fanfare. Each year the band, you may be seated. Each year the band looks forward to this evening. It's very special for us. You picked the best weather we could possibly have. It's in the 70s, 80s, and the humidity is down to 49%, so it's just a beautiful evening for us all. to think about our country and think about the people who served us. We're so honored that our country has been protected by so many wonderful men and women, and our veterans and their life of service to our country. So we're at this point, if you can see in your program, we'd like to play a medley of the service marches. It's called Salute to America's Finest. We'll be playing the U.S. service marches of the Army, followed by the Navy, Coast Guard, Marines, Air Force, and with a slight pause, we'll go into Space Force. And during the playing of these marches, we will honor that branch of the service by having the flag posted for you here so you can see which group we're on. Army will be first. And if during your service march, you could rise and join us or raise your hand, whatever fits you best, and let us know you're here, and we'd like to give you a big thank you with applause. So we'll start out with the Army March. Thank you, Oregon, Brooklyn, VFW Post. Let's give them another round of applause. And to all our veterans, thank you. Our next piece embeds and really incorporates the beautiful melody of America the Beautiful throughout all the sections of the band, especially the horn section and the trombone trumpet section. You'll hear America the Beautiful. It's called Rushmore because the piece was written for a wind band that played at the Mount Rushmore underneath the carvings there in granite, and they premiered it in 1980, and it's just been caught on by bands all over the country during this period of time. So we hope you enjoy Rushmore. We have to say thank you to the Oregon Brooklyn VFW a few times. Thanks for supplying the colors tonight. Thank you for handing out the little flags. We appreciate that. So our audience has a little flag waving going on. And then we thank the commander of the VFW of Oregon Brooklyn for being here tonight. He's in our tuba section, so he has to be. But since he's here, I invited him to play a little MacArthur for you tonight. And he's going to do the narration to our next piece called Duty, Honor, Country. And it was wonderfully produced just after World War II. And the Marine Band played it, and the Army Band played it, and MacArthur got to speak for it. So we have our own little General MacArthur with us tonight, Mr. Greg Goff, the commander of our Oregon Brooklyn VFW. Please welcome him.
Duty, honor, country, a code of conduct and chivalry of those who guard this beloved land. It's an ideal so noble that it arouses a sense of pride and yet humility. It is an expression of the ethics of the American person at arms. Person at arms, above all other people, prays for peace, for they must suffer and bear the deepest wounds and scars of war. Duty, honor, country. The unbelievers will say they are but words, a slogan, or a flamboyant phrase. Every demagogue, every cynic, every hypocrite will try to downgrade them to the extent of mockery and ridicule. The code which these words perpetuate embraces the highest moral law and will stand the test of any ethics or philosophies ever published for the uplift of mankind. Around 1,000 campfires, on 100 battlefields, listening for the witchy melody of faint bugles blowing reveille, far-off drums beating the long roll. This is the story of the American person at arms. Their name and fame are the birthright of all American citizens. And their youth and strength, and their love and loyalty, they gave all that mortality can give. They have never failed us. Were they to do so, a million ghosts in desert camo, battle dress, brown khaki, and blue and gray would rise from their white crosses, thundering those magic words: duty, honor, country.
Thank you very much. Please enjoy some refreshments by the Oregon Food Pantry supplied by Hy-Vee. Well, we want to continue your flag waving during the second half of our program. And also, if you look at the program in the second half, we're going to invite you to sing along. So if you know the words that "This Is My Country," a little later on in the second half. Also, "God Bless America," you're welcome to sing along. And of course, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, if you know the words to that. So This is the waving and singing part of the program. I can't believe it's on our fifth week of programming for our concerts this summer. It's gone so fast from the first Tuesday in June all the way through now to the first Tuesday in July. And I just have a list of people I want to thank as we go into our second half, as we conclude our season. We start out in the year in September and rehearse from September, October, and then have a concert usually at the end of November and the first of December, and we do that usually at the Oregon Middle School. So if you'd like to join the band, it's a good time to give me a call. Let me know what instruments you play, so we can have a folder ready for you. And we start the last Tuesday in September at 7 o'clock at the Oregon Middle School. So if you've played an instrument before, maybe in high school or beyond, we'd love to have you sit in with us. There is no audition. You're just welcome to fill in and come and join us and join one of our sections. It's a great group to be with. The fellowship in this band is just terrific. The band itself comes from all over southern Wisconsin. And I used to say Dane County, but that isn't wide enough. We have people from everywhere in the area, north, south, and we certainly appreciate all their efforts to get here for rehearsals, which we do in March and April and May, and then we perform in the summer, getting ready 60 pieces of music. So we're so happy that all these band members will give their time and their talents, and also stay clear of other activities they're having on Tuesday nights so they can be with us. I want to thank the Oregon Brooklyn VFW again, and also the OCA Media. They've been so good about recording all our concerts and having them online 24 hours later. So let's give a little round of applause to OCA. Appreciate it. I want to also thank Lauren Striegel, head of the Oregon Public Works Department. She's been a really good addition to our Oregon Public Works Department in getting this area ready, and we want to thank her for that. Lauren, are you here tonight? Just want to give you a little applause if you're here. Okay. But if you know Lauren, please give her our thanks, or any Public Works people, for all their efforts in keeping the park looking terrific. We continue now with a piece that I kind of hold in my heart for this night. It's close to an idea of a different type of taps. But we have a trumpet player playing off stage, so it gives it kind of that wonderful remembrance sound. It's called Evening Song. I think I heard some voices out there. It's hard to tell with the band playing. I want to thank, and personally thank tonight, the Hy-Vee folks, Tim Reinsch and also Tyler Mabey, for supplying the food and refreshments that we served tonight. We thank them for taking that on. This is the first year they've been doing that, and we thank again the Oregon Food Pantry so much for that. I want to thank you, our audience this summer too, for being here for all of our concerts. We also played at Summerfest in June, so we had a wonderful 6 weeks of programming this summer, and the weather's held up very good. We only had one rain date, and when it does rain, we just go to the Oregon Middle School. We don't cancel, we just move the program inside for that time. So we're so happy we could end the season for us outside here in the park. This has been wonderful. And personally for me, I want to say thank you to again all the band members who are with us, their participation. And again, if you're interested in joining us, you're certainly welcome to do that. The band itself, the Oregon Community Band, is self-supporting. In other words, all the people in the band give their time, talents, and sometimes some dues in order for us to buy things as you see, the chairs that we sit on, the music, also the posters that you get in the programming, and some of the posters that are hanging around town. All of those have been purchased by the band. And we also have some really, really wonderful folks who help facilitate all that by giving us special gifts. So we want to thank them also. And if you feel like you are so endowed that you would like to help us out, we certainly would appreciate it. Our goal this year is we're going to take a look at our chairs, the chairs we've been working with. We purchased about 30 years ago. So some of them are going to need replacement. So we're starting to look at that as a situation that needs some looking into. And just a couple of years ago, somebody sponsored us with all our new shirts. So our new navy blue shirts that we wear embossed with Oregon Community Band were presented by a single donor. So we want to thank them also for doing that a few years back. So as we go along here, we try not to interrupt any businesses with advertising as far as can you give to the band. The band has always been that way for 44 years. We try to do it, and with your help on your own, without too much business interference, and we don't have any support from the village except for this beautiful park, and from the school. Using the middle school has been wonderful. So we all try to work in balance so nobody has to give a whole bunch of money, but we like to have some funds in order to purchase things. So thank you again to everybody who's been able to do that, and we appreciate your attendance at all our programming. Tonight is a wonderful night, and hopefully it'll get you musically ready for July 4th.
Thank you.